So to introduce us to the problem of zero tolerance policies and the school to prison pipeline, please welcome Electric Erica and Excited Elizabeth.
Hi, I'm Excited Elizabeth.
And I'm Electric Erica.
The United States has only 5% of the world's population, but 20% of the world's prison population, making the United States the world's largest jailer. Not only that, but the recidivism rate for those released from state prisons is 80%, meaning once they walk out that prison door, within 5 years, 80% of those released from prison will walk right back in. These stats show that our criminal justice system is not working to its purpose of deterring crime and rehabilitating those who commit crimes. Each of us in this class were once unaware of the problems within the criminal justice system, but through education and research, we have made ourselves aware, and we have some ideas on how it can be reformed. And we hope that by this presentation today, you may also seek criminal justice reform of our nation's institutions. Involvement in the criminal justice system starts young, in what we call the school to prison pipeline. Disadvantaged students are often introduced to crime at a young age as a way of life. Take Lester's story, for example, a student in our class who experienced this firsthand and shared that story with us. One earlier memory of my elementary school days that haunts me until this day is my 8th grade graduation. Walking to receive my diploma from Mrs. D, my school's principal, I knew I didn't deserve to be on that stage, and Mrs. D knew it as well. I had only attended maybe a month of school that entire year, and I had been failing most of my classes. Accepting my diploma with my left hand and shaking her hand with my right, her words burned in my head. "I'm not going to suspend you, Lester, because you'll be someone else's problem next year," she had stated to me weeks earlier when she caught me cutting class. I didn't know then what I know now, that Mrs. D, along with several other of my teachers, had conspired me out of elementary school and into junior high, not so I would be someone else's student, but someone else's problem. I sometimes wonder if life would have been different for me if at least just one of my teachers had taken the time, patience, and teaching to help me. Sincerely, Lester. This story is not an isolated incident of one student being pushed out of an unfair school system. Every day, students attend schools that are underfunded, overcrowded, and prison-like. And how can we expect students to value their education if they do not feel valued by their society? We also know that these students consist primarily of racial minorities, as schools continue to be segregated today. And the poverty rates for Black and Hispanic students are 2 to 3 times higher than their white counterparts. So we know that not only are these schools segregated, economic inequality prohibits the ability to receive a quality education. Also, students are criminalized within schools by harsh disciplinary policies called zero tolerance policies that Erica will elaborate on more. In schools, we criminalize students and push them out. For example, Asbury Park High School locally here, they spend $6,000 per student per year. And it's the most racially segregated school in the area. They have just a 66% graduation rate compared to the state average of 90%. We also see schools in the area that spend upwards of $26,000 per student per year, and across the state, $60,000 per student per year. That's 6 times what students in Asbury Park High School receive per year. And that equates to better books, better classes, more extracurricular programs, and better teachers. As we know, that the statewide average salary is $61,000 a year for a teacher. But in Monmouth and Ocean counties, the average is only $34,000 a year. And teachers, just like anyone else, want to make a living and earn up to their highest potential. So the jobs that offer higher salaries will be more sought after and receive the highest quality candidates. So students are disadvantaged by the resources they receive in schools and the quality of education they receive from their teachers at no fault of their own. The undervalue given to a teacher who is underpaid will be reflected in the quality of an education that a student receives. And as a result of these systematic inequalities, students are pushed out of school into low-level work or, even worse, into the criminal justice system. The numbers show that we do not all start with an equal chance. And without an equal start, how are we to achieve equal ends? It starts in school, so we need to be doing more to invest in the future of all students.
As Excited Elizabeth has introduced, some of the issues that our school systems face today, especially in those communities that are more vulnerable to the school-to-prison pipeline, start with zero-tolerance policies. Zero-tolerance policies, if you don't know, were enacted under legislation during the 1980s and 90s and allowed school officials to ditch their evaluation of school behavior and to enact more suspensions and expulsions for the smallest infractions. These incidents can include something as small as being too loud in class, calling out, making fun of a student. Little things that normally would get you maybe a detention would get you expelled or suspended. Zero tolerance policies originated based on the claim that there was a crisis in violence in our school systems. Research has shown that wasn't ever the case. It was designed to give students fewer chances when it came to discipline and led to more expulsions and suspensions for students that were affected by these policies. Since the policy was implemented, studies have shown that at-risk youths who were affected ended up committing more crimes due to the lack of guidance in their school systems and being pushed out and into the streets. Students of color, dominantly those black students, are being targeted more often than their white counterparts as a result of these policies, and this is no accident. Take, for example, 16-year-old Jamal, who is the son of one of our inside students called Outstanding Omar. Jamal was diagnosed with attention deficit disorder as well as bipolar disorder. Because of Jamal's diagnosis, he needs more attention in classes because of his needs. So when he has an outburst in class, instead of being counseled by mental health professionals or by their teachers, police officers entered the room. Jamal was being taken out of the classroom in handcuffs for an outburst that he couldn't control based on his conditions. As a result of this situation, Jamal sees his school more like a prison than as a way of getting education. And this has been one of the many examples of people who are getting pushed out of school systems due to this discipline. Instead of understanding the circumstances of the student and why their behavior is disruptive, we have become accustomed to simply expelling or suspending the bad student. Zero tolerance policies have given school systems that lack in the resources in mental health the ability to just get rid of the student instead of trying to help them and guide them. As a result of these policies, students are being thrown out of school without that guidance and become a huge contender to the school-to-prison pipeline. Keeping our youth in school protects them from a violent path in their future. All that the zero tolerance policies have done is push them to that very path.
Aside from changing the zero tolerance policies within schools, we also believe that one solution for fostering student success is implementing more programs for students to participate in. One example that hits close to home for all of us comes out of Monmouth University itself. The debate team here hosts a debate team in Asbury Park High School that we previously mentioned. They've been doing this for 8 years, going over once a week, coaching the students in how to debate, and taking them across the state to compete in tournaments. Not only does debate increase academic and social learning, it also provides students an opportunity to communicate with college-level students. The Monmouth students serve as mentors, helping them make decisions about post-graduation and apply for college. As I said before, the graduation rate for Asbury Park High School is 66%, but the debaters for the past 8 years have a 100% graduation rate. And this is just one success story of how programs are a way that we can foster student success. Studies show that not only do programs implement a sense of belonging for students and provide social supports that they might not be getting at home, but students who participate in extracurricular programs also have increased attendance at school, better reading comprehension, and less disciplinary referrals. So, this is just one way that we can invest a little bit in our students to help them succeed. The government is always trying to relocate funding and take it away from programs, especially in the schools of students that need it the most. But we argue that this little investment of funding in programs for students would go a very long way in helping the rising generation succeed.
As we've discussed so far, at-risk youth will benefit indefinitely if communities implement properly fund and more functional education systems, and more rehabilitative programs. What I'm sure you're wondering is the same thing that I wondered when I first started this course. Where is this money coming from? Who's paying for the programs? Who's paying for better education? Well, in New Jersey, over $63 million is spent each year on incarcerating our youth. In the overall juvenile justice budget, more than half is spent on incarceration, parole, and probation, with only a small fraction of that budget going to community programs to help those youths. If we can just transition more of the budget to community programs and education, there'll be less recidivism and arrests for those at-risk youths, and we will no longer need that huge chunk of our budget going to incarceration. As a result of lack of funding for rehabilitative programs, there's an 80% recidivism rate for youths in New Jersey. 80% of the youths that are incarcerated in our state today will go back to prison within 3 years. That's something that should never happen, and that statistic is way too high. This is an issue that faces at-risk youth of all races across the nation and here in New Jersey as well. However, it is important to note that Black youths in New Jersey are 26.2 times more likely to be incarcerated than white youths. This proves that not only are we ignoring the problem of at-risk youths being funneled into the school-to-prison pipeline, but that it has also become an issue of systemic racism that starts at a young age. The numbers that I presented to you will show that not enough is being spent on education or programs for at-risk youths. For example, the overall budget in New Jersey last year was $60 billion. 22.9% of that budget went to K-12 education. That number seems generous. 22.9% is almost a fourth of the budget. However, it's not being distributed proportionately throughout the entire state, as Elizabeth talked about. Excited, Elizabeth. I want you all to take a moment, especially the Monmouth students in the room, to think about the financial strain that incarcerating our youth is taking not only our state, but as our nation as a whole. Think about how much you spend to get your bachelor's degree over 4 years. With that number in mind, picture spending that amount not on educating yourself or me or someone like you, but on incarcerating them. That number is approximately $200,000 a year to incarcerate just one of our youths. This is how much the state of New Jersey is spending on incarcerating just one youth per year. That is way too much. If we can figure out a way to channel that money into not incarcerating our youth, but to educating them and to getting them into programs that will help them get out of the school-to-prison pipeline, it will help the at-risk youth that are being affected by these policies. One of the Inside students, named Dynamic D, we worked with this semester, has a passion for poetry. I would often rap his poetry, but I can't do that, so we'll just read it. And he was able to tie in the issue of mass incarceration and education reform into his writing. This is an excerpt from one of his poems that he shared with us during this course. Because as you read these stats, you'll see a racist, sadist, sexist, extremist, Darwinist type of criminal justice system that only we as one can resist and fix. Not for me, I ask. I plead for help. For the kids who will end up being a victim to this system. And as of right now, they have no one who will listen. So I ask for you to stand with them. We stand here today to encourage you all to think about the fate of our youth in America. Those who are facing inaccessibility to proper education, whose school systems are failing them due to outdated and systemically racist policies, whose public schools are being shut down due to lack of funding, whose students are becoming warriors in the streets instead of their textbooks. We ask you today to recognize the issue at hand and stand with us to be a part of the voice that makes a change. And ways you can get involved are so simple. Volunteering in programs like Big Brother, Big Sister, donating time to be a mentor or a tutor, start a community group that encourages youth to stay in school and to do more positive activities outside of school. That list is endless, and you can be a part of that change today. Thank you.